We're getting started here. So this is a live recording. If you are joining us, we're doing First Blood, aka Rambo First Blood. We had really good success with the last recording that we did with Uncle Buck. So Big D and I are doing it again. This time, the benefit is something a little less serious. So it's not going to be Highland Park shooting relief fund. Instead, this is for our friend Tom in Crane, Texas, where we're doing a pod to raise $150 to commission him Suburban Commando, starring Hulk Hogan. So that'll be the cause today. So if everybody's ready to get started, Big D, I think.
Ooh, let's try this out.
Let's try this out.
We are recording.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Art Galt picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we will provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button to share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and are recording this very podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
So, Gene, tonight's recording has been in my head for so long that I was convinced we had done it. When this came up in the schedule, I said, there's no way. I feel like in the 300 movies, we've talked about this so much. We've debated what is a crime. We've debated the character. We have done part two, but I would have bet money that we had done this already. We had not. And I'm really glad that one of our great listeners, Nathan D., all the way from Australia, for some reason decided to commission the 1982 action movie co-written and starring Sylvester Stallone, First Blood.
And Nathan D. from Australia wrote to us and said, "Hi guys, I'm writing to you not just to commission a film, but to tell you how much I love your podcast. I stumbled across your podcast accidentally 2 years ago and have been hooked ever since, and it's now become part of my weekly routine. Watching the movie review every Sunday night, then listening to the podcast the following day on my commute to work, which I'm grateful for. I'm catching up on all your previous podcasts, and I'm currently up to number 71, Showgirls, which I'm kind of thinking Raj might have somehow tipped the scales and helped win its category. Okay, now on to my film. First Blood is up there as one of my all-time favorite movies, and I'm shocked that this hasn't been reviewed yet. It holds a dear place in my heart, and it's a movie my brother and I watch together all the time. Stallone is fantastic in this picture, and even though Rocky demonstrated Sly's acting ability, he takes it to another place in First Blood. I remember hating Brian Dennehy's character as a kid, but watching it years on, his performance holds up the movie because, in my opinion, he's not the villain in this movie. Rambo is. I'm on Team Teasle. I'd love to get your take on that. Anyway, it sounds like Big D's giving his take on that. Anyway, I could go on about this movie, but I'll leave it up to you. My score is 0 wipes, and hopefully yours will be too. Keep up the good work. Nathan D. from Australia.
I think he's way off. I don't know. We're going to debate this. I think he's got to be the only person in that camp. I think if you polled the audience, 99% of people have to be Team Rambo.
Yeah, and we kind of had this on Unforgiven, right? Where we're like, we can see where the sheriff is coming from because you're coming into his town, you're causing a lot of trouble. He's trying to keep the death count down, trying to keep the violence out of town and trying to settle things. In this case, I think Teasle is escalating and escalating and escalating. Nathan, we'll definitely discuss it, but I don't think you're going to like where we go.
I mean, this is the Northwest. The sheriff complains that his hair is long and he's smelly. I thought that was like part of being from the Northwest. Everybody there should smell and have long hair.
You know, when I first visited Portland, I thought all of Oregon was like that, but it turns out that like Washington, Oregon, the more rural parts are much more like Idaho than they are coastal towns. Inland northwestern U.S. is a weird fucking place. Well, First Blood is a 1982 action movie co-written by Sylvester Stallone, who stars as a Vietnam War veteran, John Rambo. It co-stars Richard Crenna as Rambo's mentor, Sam Trautman, and Brian Dennehy as Sheriff Will Teasle. The film is based on the 1972 novel First Blood by David Morrell and was released in the United States on October 22nd, 1982. Initial reviews were mixed, but the film was a box office success, grossing $156 million. In 1985, it also became the first Hollywood blockbuster to be released in China, holding the record for the largest number of tickets sold for an American film until 2018. Its success spawned a franchise consisting of 4 sequels, co-written by and starring Stallone, an animated TV series, a comic book series, a novel series, several video games, and Indian remakes. So, Big D, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. I grew up in an Iranian-American immigrant family in the 80s. So, complex films in English were not very entertaining to my uncles or to my mom. They had to see things happening on screen and try to pick up the dialogue as they went along. So action movies like American Ninja, Missing in Action with Chuck Norris, First Blood, that was something we could all enjoy together. Me, because I was a child and I could wrap my head around a dude running around in the forest laying booby traps. And my family, because there wasn't much dialogue in the movie that wasn't like pantomimed enough for anyone to understand. You could watch this movie with no dialogue and you still get the point.
Yeah, for me, like you're reading that about, what it spawned, the cartoon, the other movies, the franchise. It triggered in my memory that my mother used to go to KB Toys. And when a toy line was at the end of its run, whether it was like Chuck Norris, the Michael Jackson dolls, the New Kids on the Block dolls, Star Wars, when they would put them in the discount bin, my mother would go buy them all and just throw them in the attic with the hope that one day they would become worth money. And a lot of them paid off. The Star Wars, even the Michael Jackson dolls went for good money. She was on eBay early on, and she had the John Rambo dolls, the full set, and never let me play with them. They had to sit there in the boxes, and I had to look at them but could not play with them.
This might be the biggest indicator of our divide in age, because I didn't know Michael Jackson toys existed. Did you own one of those?
I did not. They were the same. The New Kids on the Block, they were about 12-inch tall dolls, and they came in all of his famous outfits. Thriller, Beat It. Those were the only 2 I really remember.
All of them.
She luckily sold them before he had all the controversy, so she made a couple $100 off of each doll. She did. New Kids on the Block were the same way. But for me, this movie, I don't think anybody in the audience is going to be surprised. This was a big movie to me growing up. I loved it. Probably now thinking back to Red Dawn and all of the war movies that I enjoy so much, it makes sense that I would end up in the military, even though I didn't think it was a foregone conclusion. But John Rambo, he was a superhero to me. He was like a one-man army. And one of my fondest memories was we have a house that my parents live up in the mountains now in Ulster County, New York. We would go to the Dutchess County Fair. I've probably talked about before. It is a typical large county fair with fried everything, but they would also have tons of booths with knives, weapons, swords. And I was just yearning for this John Rambo knife. It looked amazing. It was like when I looked at it, I could see a glowing aura around it. They okayed me to buy it. And it had the compass on top of the handle. It had the needle and thread. It had fish hooks. It had, I think, some matches. You could take the case and the knife and intertwine them, and you could cut barbed wire. Amazing. I used to spend countless solitary afternoons and evenings wandering around the woods in Ulster County, New York, imagining I was John Rambo. I was a killing machine. I was setting traps. I was building forts. Good times.
All right, well, with that, let's grab our survival knives, strap on a tarp, make our way into the woods, and hit the trailer.
John Rambo, a drifter, just passing through their town.
Morning! Headed north or south?
North.
Now jump in. I'll make sure you're heading the right direction, huh?
You got someplace I can eat around here?
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against me getting something here?
Yeah, me. I want you to book this gentleman for vagrancy, resisting arrest, carrying a concealed weapon.
They knew he was innocent.
Starting to dislike you. A lot.
And they didn't give a damn.
That's okay, Warren. Don't worry about the soap. He's tough. Just shave him. Try.
Don't move. I don't want you to cut your own throat.
John Rambo. One man who's been pushed too far.
You're finished! You've gone as far as you're gonna go!
Heading straight for the top. Right on top of him. There's no way out of here except through us.
He was hunted. Trapped.
There he is! On the cliff!
And forced to fight back.
Don't push it. Don't push it. I'll give you a war you won't believe.
Teasle, you and all your men couldn't handle him before. Now, what makes you think you can handle him now?
Because God knows what damage he's prepared to do.
You don't seem to want to accept the fact that you're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare.
Are you telling me that 200 men against your boy is a no-win situation for us?
You send that many, don't forget one thing. A good supply of body bags.
Sylvester Stallone. This time, he's fighting for his life. First Blood.
John Rambo is a Vietnam War veteran who makes his way to the outskirts of Hope, Washington, only to learn that his friend had died the previous year of cancer. Entering the town, Rambo meets the sheriff, Will Teasle, who drives Rambo to the outskirts of town before dropping him off. As Teasle heads back into town, he spots Rambo trying to return. He arrests Rambo on charges of vagrancy, resisting arrest, and possessing a concealed knife before bringing him to the police station.
So First Blood is based loosely on a novel by David Morrell, 1972. You look at the poster, you're thinking, holy shit, there is Sylvester Stallone. He's got the M60. This is going to be the fuck yeah, America, patriotic bloodfest. He's going to be killing some foreign adversary, but that's not what it was. It was a very different movie than what anyone expected and what I expected. It's not about killing people. It's about the rejection of soldiers when they came back from the war and trying to reintegrate into society. John Rambo is a damaged dude. He's crying out for help. He's lost everything, his family, his identity, and the worst part is his purpose for living.
Big D, you talk often about how stolen valor is one of the things that pisses you off more than anything. I think movies run that danger themselves. It's easy for movies to botch the story of the oppressed or the unwanted or survivors of horrifying events, right? Like, we're going to recreate the grittiness of war and show what these men went through. And they earnestly try their best, but you've got these Hollywood pretty boys overacting. The events are always embellished to pull in the audience, right? They can't tell the story exactly as it went. And I would have thought that about First Blood, but all 4 college-level Vietnam War classes I took, 3 of which were taught by Marine Corps veterans of the war, they incorporated this movie into the coursework. They're like, you have to see First Blood to understand what veterans went through. And that's got to count as an endorsement of its view on combat veterans.
Oh, I think so. I think, and if you also look at Stallone, his first Rocky movie and this, he is very grounded. He is very blue collar guy. He isn't the action star. Yes, he's ripped, and we'll talk, he's been walking, the whole Northwest coast, but he doesn't look superhuman. He looks like a guy who you'd figure out there who had been trained. He was in the military. He looks the part. He does it with respect. And I think it works for me. And now you get Teasle. There is no give. He is a bad guy. I immediately can tell I want this guy to die. And I think it's one of the few weaknesses of the movie, because at the end, I caught it upon this viewing. If you look behind Teasle's desk, he's got 3 awards. One of them is a Purple Heart. So I feel like there is some subtext that Teasle is a veteran. He understood what was going on, but he was just doing his job. I wish we had seen something why he and America had rejected Rambo and not just been so, get out of here, drifter.
And people like Nathan, who commissioned this film, think about this movie. They always mention Brian Dennehy, right, as Teasle being villain, and he is fantastic in this. You really get a twofer in this movie because you've also got Jack Starrett. And it's got to be tough going into a movie knowing you're the guy everyone's going to hate. Like, if you do your job effectively, everyone's going to hate you. And Jack Starrett, if you don't know, if you remember Blazing Saddles, there was that guy, Gabby Johnson. He had he looked like a prospector. He had like the big beard and he just was mumbling stuff and nobody knew what he was saying in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. That's Jack Starrett. He plays Deputy Galt in First Blood. And I'm watching this guy for like 2 minutes fucking with Rambo. And I wanted to take a baseball bat to the TV screen. Not in a way of like, I hate this movie, but in like, I hate that guy's face. He is that fucking hateable. And the only cop who got any sympathy for me was poor David Caruso. Like, he's in this movie, he's the redheaded guy, and he's just like trying, like, maybe we don't have to take it so hard on him. Why are we being so mean to him? So I actually felt bad for him because he got caught up in the whole thing, and he should have just gone home that day.
Dude, he's the voice of logic. Hey, guys, you think we should be careful? Something's off about this guy. Oh, shut up. And he actually gets choked by another officer. And that point, he gets beat up. He didn't deserve it. And I wish we also had seen a scene where maybe Rambo had cornered Mitch, remembered that he was the nice guy to him, and like patted him on the back or something and let him go. Because he's the only decent cop, and the rest of them, they could all fuck off and die.
And Big D, you talked about getting that giant ass survival knife at the fair. I don't know if survival knives were like a big thing before Rambo. I don't remember them being. You're, a little bit older. You know about Michael Jackson toys. Maybe you know about survival knives as well. But after seeing this movie in my generation, right, every kid I knew had to have one of these. I must have gone through about a half dozen plastic versions of the giant Rambo survival knife and like 3 or 4 real ones. They're comically large. They're not as sharp as Rambo's was, and they contain all kinds of doodads, like you mentioned. Like, I had one that had like flint, a compass, some paracord. I think there was a flashlight in there. I never used half that shit, and I've gotten way more use, like 100 times more use out of just my everyday carry, which is like a tiny Heckler and Koch Axis. Like, just a little knife is all you need. You don't need that big ass thing.
No, but I think movies with guys particularly, weapons you get kind of hooked on as a kid. So there was this. Then there was also a period with ninja stars. We've talked about like American Ninja. I wanted ninja stars. I wanted a katana. But this thing, as a kid, it looked like the biggest badass weapon. It's not practical at all. And I was half disappointed when I joined the military that we were not issued some kind of tactical knife. I'm like, come on, there's got to be something, But sadly, they do not. The only time I ever used a bladed weapon was we did bayonet training in basic training. But other than that, you never got one. But there is one piece of equipment. Somebody's going to call me out on this, but I think 99.99% of the military combat arms particularly does carry a single multi-tool weapon. It is the Leatherman. I don't know if you've ever seen these. They fold out. It looks almost like a butterfly knife, but when you open it up, it's like a giant Swiss Army knife. There's all kinds of, there's a bottle opener, knives, screwdrivers. It's everything that you would need in the field. Things are amazing. But maybe that was like the modern version of Rambo's knife. He didn't have a Leatherman. Maybe if they made it today, he would.
I recently was reading an article about the most useless pieces of military equipment. And by and large, what I heard from the Army was that periscope flashlight that you got. Did you ever get one of those?
Yes, of course.
Was it really a piece of shit?
It was a piece of shit, and it came with like a red lens. Also, it was garbage. Like, what are you going to do with this? Am I going to go down like chasing Charlie through the tunnels?
Is that what it's for? Like, what? What's with the periscope shape? What's that all about?
I have no clue. You would never use it. Maybe it was like to stick it over something so you wouldn't get shot. It was pointless piece.
This is destroying my entire impression of the U.S. military. They gave you things that didn't tell you what to do with them.
Oh, no. Then that's the beauty. We've debated this before, is that whoever designs the equipment never uses them in a real world situation. So famously, I talked about the Miles gear. It was a military laser tag that we would play, and you would wear the harness and your head had the harness. And there was a giant metal control box, because it had to be industrial. The thing was sitting in the middle of your back, which makes sense if you're in a boardroom with engineers in the air conditioning designing these things. But once you put your rucksack on, it's right in the middle of your neck. So you would end up wearing these things backwards with the box at your chest. just to make the equipment work. So there was somebody with a flashlight who was like, this will make sense, but it didn't.
Well, sadistic Chief Deputy Art Galt pressures Rambo, triggering flashbacks of the torture he endured as a POW. Rambo snaps and overwhelms the patrolman, steals a motorcycle, and flees into the woods. Teasle organizes a search party with automatic weapons and a helicopter. Galt defies Teasle's orders and attempts to shoot Rambo from the helicopter. Rambo leaps from a cliff and lands on a tree branch, injuring his right arm. He throws a rock at the helicopter, cracking its windshield and causing the pilot to briefly lose control. Galt loses his balance and falls to his death on the rocks below.
So I have not read the novel, but from what I understand in researching it, they spend more time on the background of Rambo's specific PTSD. You get to understand why he's resisting, why he freaks out in the police station. But the movie, you can't do the time and the internal monologue that a character has in a 90-minute long movie. So they don't have the time. And I appreciate that the movie, when they're doing the flashbacks, we're starting to see Rambo's experience he's getting in process kind of interspliced with the scenes that match what he's seeing, whether it's the bars, whether it's the blade, the people who are in front of him. I like that they kept it short. It could have gotten super cheesy. It could have gotten, which it does in the later entries into the series, that it gets more comical and we see these entire scenes. When they give us the little flashbacks, it's a case of less is more. It lets us imagine what horrible things are going on in his experience as a POW. And I think it was a smart move.
These weren't like high quality flashbacks, but it was enough to get us the story. I don't get the look that he had as a POW because in later installments, they at least like he looks like he's had a bad day. They've got him strung up. You know, he's got like a little bit of a beard going on. In this one, he had like this pencil thin, it was like a Fu Manchu looking thing. Yeah. And he's doing this, you know, he's doing that trademark Sylvester Stallone, like, you know, thing, like the sneer with the mustache. And then he's got like a sweatband. Like maybe dressing him up goofy was part of the torture because he looks ridiculous.
It looked like it was an afterthought. It looked almost like it was Lemmy from Motorhead. It looked like he was a biker extra that they'd pulled in or just slapped that thing on. But again, if we had seen more than 13 seconds of it, it would be like, what is Stallone wearing? Because I don't picture, he didn't go into camp with that mustache, or did he? Or did he choose to grow it like that?
I think
in the camp.
Yeah, he looked more like he was trying to infiltrate like a 70s Venice pizzeria.
Or a gay biker
bar. Or a gay biker bar, yeah.
I
don't know. But back to him being a badass, I'm starting to realize that First Blood influenced a lot of my economic decisions throughout life, from, you know, buying the aforementioned survival knives to wearing a lot of sweatbands as a kid. The most recent purchase was a Yamaha XT250, which is arguably the easiest conventional motorcycle to ride. It's lightweight. It puts out less than 20 horsepower. It's pretty much bulletproof, and it can tackle most trails. If you're out there and you're looking for a dual sport bike to ride and get started on, even if you're not that tall, Yamaha XT250, trust me on this one. When I saw John Rambo ripping through Hope, Washington on that beautiful machine, I saw that. I was like, I gotta have one. I didn't know how I was ever going to afford one, but I gotta have one. And nearly 4 decades later, I got my wish. I still can't do fucking wheelies like he's doing for some reason as he's running from the cops. But I gotta ask Big D, how do you think Rambo's chase scenes stack up against like Smokey and the Bandit? Because I had more fun watching these for like 2 minutes than all of Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, I agree, because it's less comical. You believe that Rambo could pull these off. Other than the first scene where he takes off and he does a little bit of the wheelie, all of the rest of his maneuvers are meant to get away. I do wish that he had taken some tactics to go through paths or maybe some obstacles the car couldn't go. But again, he didn't know where he was going, but the bike is up to it. I wanted also, Gene, one of these when I was a kid. It's an enduro, correct? Is that what it's categorized as, like a road end?
They now refer to them as dual sports, but in the day, this would have been referred to as an enduro, yes. And in Europe, I think they still call them enduros.
And I love the fact that the car is taking a fucking beating. The car is bottoming out. The car is flipping over at a point. It's a chase that you can get invested in, because at any point, Rambo could hit a rock he couldn't climb. It could go out from under him. He doesn't want to lay that bike down wearing that tank top. That would be painful. But it's a great scene. It's a great chasing.
I mean, his dismount for that motorcycle wasn't exactly Simone Biles either. He just kind of fucking flew off the thing.
Well, but you get the audio over. oh, when he's like rolling backwards, which is used a couple times.
That's some borderline Schwarzenegger. That's very nice.
Yeah, I got to work on my Rambo.
Hey, Big D, we got to get to the topic that everybody knows. We've been promoting it. You and I have talked about it ad nauseum on other podcasts. It's the Galt thing, right? Who killed Galt? So we've argued this point before, but never on the podcast live directly. John Rambo does not kill anyone in First Blood. Galt was reckless. He caused his own death by breaking protocol. For those of you who don't know, the scene is they're on a helicopter. Galt has Rambo on the side of a mountain. He's on a cliff. He's barely hanging on. He's got a rifle. He's told not to fire. He is told that there's thermal drafts and that he's thermo drafts, right? And that and that it's not really safe, that the helicopter can't stay steady. He undoes his safety harness, right? And just to shoot at Rambo. So I say, my argument is he was reckless. He broke protocol. He removed his safety harness and he was just a fucking asshole. This guy had a bloodlust that led to his own death. All Rambo did was throw a rock to get a helicopter to go away, which I think is a pretty benign offense.
Okay, so we got to clarify here. Are we talking legally responsible or morally responsible?
I say he didn't kill anybody.
Okay, because 100% he is legally responsible. He is 100%. He caused that death. It's just like if someone's driving down a wintry road and you throw a snowball into an open window, hit the driver, and the driver crashes. You're legally culpable. Any lawyers out there, please write it. But I'm 99% sure, because you get the people who throw like turkeys and shit off of overpasses that hit cars that crash. They didn't necessarily intend to kill the person. It wasn't a gunshot, but I think he is legally responsible. Now, morally, hell no. He needed to do this. Rambo, he's hanging on the side of a cliff, mountain climbing with Timberland boots. How that is possible, he's sliding with the moss. He sees the tree. He's in a situation. He has to make a decision. The pilot, who they kind of commandeered from the logging site, he's saying, this is not safe. I'm going to leave. But Galt is hell-bent on shooting Rambo. And I don't care. He's a shitty cop and a shitty shot. Rambo is no joke. 30, 40 feet in front of him. You've got a good position. Yes, the helicopter's moving, but you should have been able to hit him. And I believe he threw the rock not to kill Galt or to cause the accident, but it was to encourage the helicopter to fly out of Chapman Gorge. Otherwise, I think he's legally responsible there. But Gene, what about this? What about the dogs? You're a dog lover. We get the 4 innocent, beautiful. They look like Doberman pinschers, right? Yeah. Dobermans. Mm-hmm. Those dogs, I could feel you wincing every time you hear the dogs would whimper and you could hear like bones snap. How do you feel about those deaths?
So I was watching this movie with Sarah and one of her sisters, and they kind of cringed at the dog deaths. I felt nothing, Big D. I love dogs. I believe that using them for law enforcement is animal abuse. But if a dog is coming to take a bite out of me, I am killing that dog. I felt no sympathy for those Dobermans. They were cops as far as I was concerned.
What about the dog handler? You go get them, girls. You killed my beauty. You get them. And the cops, they have him. He's got like a wound. He's been shot in the leg. Hey, release that tourniquet in 15 minutes. We'll see you later. We don't see him in the rest of the movie. I don't think he made it out of the gorge. I think Chapman Gorge was where he lays and where he's resting today.
Well, Rambo tries to persuade Teasle that Galt's death was an accident, but officers hit him with a non-lethal shot. Rambo subdues the deputies until only Teasle is left. Holding a knife to Teasle's throat, Rambo threatens to give him a war he won't believe before retreating further into the woods. The state police and Washington National Guard are brought in to assist Teasle, along with Rambo's mentor, Colonel Sam Trautman. Trautman advises that Rambo should be allowed to escape to the next town in order to defuse the situation, but Teasle refuses. Trautman contacts Rambo, who refuses to come in, condemning Teasle and his deputies for their abuse and noting how they drew first blood.
So this movie was kind of low budget, and there's not that many special effects. You could tell they spent all the money on the few big explosions. We get the end, the destruction of the town. We get whatever that rocket launcher was into the mine. Those are the two big ones. But I really do love the small special effects that we got. When Galt does the somersault out of the helicopter, he hits the rocks, his body kind of opens up and we get the camera shot. It is steam. There is steam like bubbling out of that body that I was like, holy shit, I wouldn't have even thought of that. You know, he looks like you've been cooking a lobster and you just threw it out there in a cold day. He's steaming. I appreciate that. And then also, surprisingly, when Rambo takes that somersault through the trees and all the branches, whatever, it's ridiculous. He's dead or he's impaled on the tree. He gets that laceration on his bicep. The camera's zooming in. I got a decent TV and I could not see the seam. It did not look like a fake arm. He is stitching and the blood is simultaneously oozing down the wound. I think they did a really good job of capturing some real life wounds, and they did a good job with the special effects.
The visuals might have been passable, but the sound editing on this movie was laughable. Like the canned gunfire, the ricochets. I expect better out of a movie of this caliber, no pun intended. There was like the overblown smack of the kicks. Every time he kicks somebody, it was like, crash. And the really weird one is that canned punch sound that they use in movies, the psh, like when he would bust doors open, it would make that noise. It was like somebody was just going crazy on the soundboard there. It felt like a parody of an 80s action movie.
Yeah, but there was also Roger would have had his head explode about the ADR. There's a couple scenes where Stallone's dialogue does not match what he's saying. And there's a part where he's on the motorcycle and he's saying something, but there's no audio dialogue or subtitles. So this is 82, Gene. This is all analog. Can you imagine trying to record or Foley work in an analog age? This was par for the course.
I'm saying other movies were made in the 80s that sounded much better. We have something to compare it to. This was not the creme de la creme.
Oh, no. Another question I have, I can't get it in the podcast now because we passed it. How did he get his knife back? The deputy put it into the evidence room, locked it, but yet when he runs out, he's carrying it. Continuity error, Gene.
Yeah, instead of taking a gun, he grabbed the knife.
He leaves all the guns.
Yeah.
He just leaves them out there. And then he blows through a 15-round magazine.
Well, the knife was critical to making booby traps, though. And it's a good thing I suck at building booby traps because watching Rambo take out like a whole sheriff's department with his knife and a couple of modified trees inspired me to build these things nonstop as a kid. I would build them in the woods in Christopher Creek, Arizona. I'd build them around my neighborhood. I'd build booby traps inside the house. This is pre-Home Alone. And some of my worst were, I had one where there was a fishing line and I connected it to a can that was like on the riverbank. And so when you cross the creek, the can would fill up with water and the line was wrapped around your leg and it would get so heavy that you wouldn't be able to walk across the creek anymore. I was like fucking 5 years old. The physics made sense to me. I also had I made a bow and arrow that I could fire from 20 feet away by hitting it with a thrown rock, which like in hindsight as an adult, like why didn't I just fucking throw a rock at a person? But the idea was to string the bow and arrow and then have it just with a twig or like a stick so that when I hit it with a rock, it would fire off. I never actually hit the bow and arrow with the rock, but those are my best attempts. I never did anything as cool as Rambo did, as quickly as Rambo did.
The only thing I could ever get to really work was like fishing line and tin cans. So you would put it around your perimeter so that if someone was trying to sneak up on you and they hit the line, you'd hear the clanking cans, the bling, 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 bling. So you would know, hey, they're coming to get you, you know. But Rambo, you don't really need to be setting up these booby traps because you can see these 5 knuckleheads coming from a half mile away. You've got one white dude, pale from the Northwest, has not seen sun in months. His head is glistening. You got all the other cops wearing these white coverings on their hats. Rambo could have been like, hey, I see you guys. Stay away. I'm going to kill you. Yes, you over there with the mustache. I'm going to kill you. That would have worked. But as I've seen this movie plenty of times, when we get to the scene where Mitch, poor David Caruso, he's fumbling around and Rambo jumps up. I couldn't see him. I was shocked that I did not spot it. I remembered where he does the leap off of like the big log. But this one, I had to pause it, rewind. Rambo did a pretty good job without a ghillie suit of playing stealth.
This is why guys like you and me are too old to be in the Army Reserve, because I didn't see him either. Sarah was half awake on the couch and she's like, good job hiding. Like, how does the cop not see him? And I was like, see who? And all of a sudden Rambo jumps up. I'm like, oh, fuck, he was there. And I rewound it. Yeah, he's right there in plain sight. But yeah, we're fucking old. That's why we need to be generals or senators.
I need to be back in the pharmacy tomorrow. I can't be here. I need to go back to Krav. I can't spot him. What about that time where he's laying near the river? Come on, Rambo. That looks cool, but that's not practical. What are you trying to get hypothermia? What are you doing?
I mean, nothing tops First Blood Part 2 though, where he's covered in mud and then you just see the eyes open up while the guy walks by. So I mean, look, at least it had some semblance to reality.
Exactly. But we've gotten this far into the podcast without talking about the other major recurring character in the entire franchise. We get Rambo's basic, his father, his only family. And as a kid, I thought he was an absolute badass. I thought he rolls into town. He's going to put these state police, all of these hick cops and the National Guards on notice. Now as an adult and somebody who's limited military experience, I thought it was laughable. So now I'm going to read to you Trautman's speech. And I'm not going to be able to do this justice, but just listen to what he's saying. You don't seem to want to accept the fact. You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare, with a man who's the best, with guns, with knives, with his bare hands. It's kind of like Shatner doing poetry. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land, to eat things that would make a billy goat puke. In Vietnam, his job was to dispose of enemy personnel, to kill, period, win by attrition. Well, Rambo is the best. We get it. We get it. Rambo's a badass. Just like before when we see the flashbacks, little is more. He should just roll in and say, oh, you guys are still alive. How do you feel about that? And just hint at what Rambo is capable of. Hint at what he's done. Instead, he's giving all of these operational details. I'm surprised he was like, when we were in Cambodia and we were running drugs and we had to kill the Viet Cong. Like, he's going into detail. Keep it vague, keep it cryptic, and it would have been much more effective.
Alternatively, come in and say, hey, this guy's got PTSD. He went through some shit in Vietnam. Maybe take it easy on him. Guys, yes. I'm asking you, I'm begging you. As opposed to he's like, I'm not here to protect him from you. I'm here to protect you from him.
Yeah. John, we're going to get on a plane to brag. No, you're not. John doesn't believe that. Nobody believes you're getting on a helicopter to brag. Nobody.
And it's not just the lines, it's how he says them. Like, Richard Crenna must have watched a lot of John Wayne in Green Berets because he's got this weird cowboy swagger when he's delivering the lines. And that is unlike any Army officer I've ever met. I had a Colonel Trautman action figure, and I took that shit everywhere with me when I was a kid. It was like one of my favorite toys growing up, and now I'm just embarrassed to have ever associated myself with this guy. He seems like he's making it all up.
Exactly.
Well, trying to slip through the cordon, Rambo is surprised by a young boy out hunting. He overpowers the boy, but does not harm him. The boy alerts the authorities. A National Guard detachment corners Rambo at the entrance of an abandoned mine, and the inexperienced guardsmen use a rocket launcher, collapsing the entrance. Rambo survives and is forced to go deeper into the rat-infested mine. Rambo finds an exit and hijacks an Army supply truck carrying an M60 machine gun. He decides to return to town and cause as much damage as possible. I get that John Rambo promises the sheriff a war you won't believe, but even before that, John Rambo was making some bad decisions for a fugitive. He runs up a mountain, not knowing the terrain, and he finds himself at a cliff. And the deputies are even calling it out. They're like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, we're going to have him by the afternoon. He's going the wrong fucking way. But along the way, he stops to like cut up a tarp into a poncho. He's cooking meals. He's accessorizing. Like, this whole time, he should have been running through the woods, living off the land quietly for weeks. That's his specialty, right? Until he could slowly make his way out undetected. There was no perimeter. Then when he gets his hands on a truck with an M60, he could have either driven away with a machine gun, good luck catching him, or blown up the town and then slipped away in a different vehicle, right? No, instead he decides, I'm making a stand right here. This is just bad tactics.
No, Gene, he's in unfamiliar territory. He's only in the Northwest because he's tracking down his old teammates, his old group guys. So I liked the fact that he's taking these moments. Yes, I went out and found a dirty tarp and cut a hole in it and made myself a Rambo poncho with a rope around the waist. I did that. He's got to keep himself from getting hypothermia. We see snow a couple scenes later, and you got the body, which is steaming. It's obviously cold. He's going to get into a position where he's safe. He's going to try to figure out the land and try then to leave the area. I'm willing to cut him some slack.
You know what every guy he takes out is wearing?
A jacket. Well, the one jacket he takes is that he uses that for the scarecrow. But anybody
Exactly.
who plays video game, Gene, he should be picking up equipment. He should be picking up one M16 and then take all the rounds off of everybody else. At least, thankfully, he takes a radio, but he should be at least gathering equipment so that he could survive, make his life easier. And even though we never get in all the movies we complain, see anybody reload, they took the time in this movie to see Rambo make a torch and then continue strapping new pieces of leather on it. So I appreciate the attention to detail, but you got to realize the foe, he's got the hillbilly cops, he's got the National Guard. And I love, as someone who, anybody out there who was, let's just say, active duty, then went National Guard or Reserve, I don't mean to insult you or lump you into this, but I love the complete lack of discipline that the National Guard shows. When they're refusing outright orders to go into the mine, they're the weekend warrior on the spot. They are, my experience with reservists and National Guards. They don't want to be bothered. This is a part-time gig for them. They want health insurance. They want to go out. It's like the Cub Scouts for adults. Go out every couple of weekends, go do some exercises, go do a PT test, which is a joke. You know, even the commander complains. Like I said before, he's got to go back to the pharmacy the next day. This National Guard, they're a special group. And when they're going to try to reenact the photo from Iwo Jima, when the camera cuts and all of these out of shape regular dudes who've been called up there and they're leaning with that tree up, this is a very special group. And I think the movie does capture that to a certain extent.
Yeah, it makes sense to me now why the U.S. military spends so much time developing culture and traditions to make people believe that they are soldiers, sailors, Marines, merchant Marines. It's a testament to how effective a fighting force can be if they're only in it for the paycheck. Like I've read a few books on the Iraq wars, and American soldiers and sailors uniformly say that outside of a few elite groups, like most of the local soldiers that were fighting against the Muj, they were just there to earn a living, right? And they would flee if faced with heavy combat. Like, just making money is not reason enough for somebody to risk their life, and these guys are the epitome of that.
No, and let me put this out there for anybody who might object. Would you go to a surgeon for a big surgery who only practiced surgery 1 weekend a month and 1 week a year? Would you go to any profession where the person only practiced that 1 weekend a month and 1 week a year? Nobody. You can't be proficient at anything doing it that little.
This just in from the Twitch live chat. The Washington Army National Guard is also known as the Wang.
Yeah, it fits.
The Wang.
The Wang.
If anybody out in Washington has a Washington National Guard t-shirt that they'd like to send me, I wear a medium. Rambo blows up a gas station, shoots out most of the town's power, and destroys a gun store near the police station. Trautman tries again to convince Teasle to leave Rambo be, but the sheriff wants to kill Rambo himself. Rambo and Teasle engage in a brief gunfight that ends with Teasle being shot and falling through a skylight. Trautman warns Rambo that he will be killed if he does not surrender. Now cornered, Rambo rages about the horrors he's endured. He surrenders and is taken into federal custody, while Teasle is taken to a waiting ambulance. So, I know Sylvester Stallone has become a caricature of himself, but going way back, as our commissioner suggested, performances like the original Rocky and First Blood really show us that this guy was honestly giving it his everything as an actor. He is trying to be a legitimate dramatic presence on screen. His breakdown, while he's talking to Trautman about having nothing in the civilian world, it starts off a bit shaky, but even the worst cynic can't help but feel for the guy. And the movie takes a huge gamble here. We've talked about this before. When a action movie tries to have a dramatic scene, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it's going to go wrong. But this one, it pays off. And I would argue that the series never again reaches this level of earnest emotion.
So I've gone both ways on this. Recently, I don't know if you've seen, there is a traffic stop It's a police body camera. And he comes up onto a pickup truck and he rolls the window down. He says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it's a veteran breaking down. And he's saying, and I get emotional thinking of it. He's saying, "I'm on the phone with suicide prevention now. And the dude is melting down. He's breaking down, and he's on the phone with the VA, with mental health providers, and the cop is talking to him. And he's like, "What unit were you with?" And the guy's like, "I can't live. I can't." And you can hear and see him just grasping at straws. And I think that's what Stallone went for. At first, you kind of feel like this is going to go way off, but then you realize it's very true to the way people melt down. People don't do it in a pretty way. They don't do it in a logical way. They don't do it in something that's cinematic. It's ugly to lose your mind and emotionally just come apart at the seams. It's ugly. And Trautman, fuck Trautman. He is an indictment of the entire military establishment. He is incapable of saying anything to Johnny. He's always saying, "Hey, Johnny, come in. Hey, motherfucker, you are the system that created Rambo. He's a human shell. This is you. And you who have touted, I was there with you in the shit." So if anybody in this world knows what John has been through, it should be you. You should be able to sit down and ease his pain. Trautman should be able to just at least talk to him and say, "John, listen, this isn't the end. I was there with you. I know what you went down." But he fails again. Fuck Trautman. He pretends like he cares about him. The most memorable leaders I ever had in my life were the ones who connected on a personal level. The ones who you knew, no matter what you were doing, what danger you were in, they cared about you. You were their family. When you're in a situation like that, the only thing you have is the people around you. That's who you fight for, their family. And in a time of crisis, Trautman is the only family that he has. And he sits there and not once even pretends like, "John, there's hope. You can recover. I went through this. There's people you can talk to in the VA." And shout out to the VA. I'm not embarrassed. I still monthly go to the VA and go to mental health. There's great services out there. So if you're a veteran out there, go and talk to someone. The services are there. Being mentally in need and seeing Rambo try just for a human connection to touch Trautman and get nothing back, it enraged me.
I just want to know what Teasle was doing the whole time. Because Rambo and Trautman are having like a 5-minute dramatic moment. And Brian Dennehy, yeah, he's been shot up the ass, but he's not dead. He's like 10 feet over there. He isn't yelling. He's not calling for support on the radio. He's not grabbing his sidearm. He's not doing anything. I've seen this movie before, but in my head, I remembered him like trying to pull some shit at the last second. Apparently, he just lays there until they come get him.
No, but I think now the indictment of Trautman that Teasle's been making the whole time maybe is true. He's there just to protect his own ass.
Yeah.
You know, just get him out there, squash the story, go back to your fucking job in Washington, wearing the leather, smooth on your chair. He doesn't even know that the members of the team had died. So how connected is Trautman? "Oh, well, what about those guys? Oh, they're dead, Colonel Trautman. Oh, I hadn't heard." Yeah, thanks, motherfucker.
Yeah, just hanging out at bars, smoking cigars, and drinking fine liquor out of tulip glasses or snifters.
Getting paid that sweet lobbyist money. Whatever the hell he's doing in Washington.
All right, well, now is the time when we give our Shat score for First Blood. The wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get our respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is heading out for a National Guard weekend with the boys, the Wang, and scoring a bullseye with your rocket launcher. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It is getting killed for vagrancy in Jerkwater, USA. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for First Blood?
I think this movie, is it perfect? No, it's flawed. But it was a movie that started the conversation. Just like Saving Private Ryan with Another Generation, it started the conversation of veterans coming home and grandfathers talking about their experience that they had never shared with their families. This movie started the conversation. I remember being a kid and being like, "Holy shit, why do the police hate the soldiers? Why is he embarrassed?" It started my journey down education and started learning about the history and what had happened and how the Vietnam War was viewed. So for me, I got to take some knocks off there. I think it's a great performance by Sly. I think it's bare bones. It's a quick movie that goes, there's even a little bit of humor. Gene, I laughed when he's pushing the National Guardsman out of the truck and he says, Look at the road. This is how accidents happen. And then he pushes the dude out of the car. So I appreciate it for that. I think it's a 1.5 wipe movie. I think it's well worth watching. And I think it stands up to time.
Well, this is where you get out, Robert A.
Yes, exactly. Hey, look at the road. That's how accidents happen.
Oh, First Blood has some terrible action sequences, awful Foley work, zero logic, and arguably the worst closing credit song I've ever heard. If you were with us at the beginning of the Twitch stream, you heard us singing it out. But that song, it's a long road, as an instrumental, not terrible. With lyrics, I'll tell ya. It's really bad. Go check, if you're on Spotify, whatever, check it out. It's terrible. But the story itself, it's incredibly compelling. Stallone and Dennehy are so good in this movie, and it's really pretty to watch. And we talked about that scenery in the Pacific Northwest is absolutely gorgeous. As Big D said, the steam coming off of things, that mist, just the greenery. This is a gorgeous movie to watch. It's better than its sequels, but it is certainly not a terrific movie. So for me, I'm going to say better than average, but it's 2.25 wipes. So 2.25 wipes from me, 1.5 wipes from Big D. That comes out to an average wipe score of 1.875 wipes for First Blood.
So Gene, with a final wipe score of 1.875 wipes, that now makes this movie all alone in the 116 spot. It is slightly better than Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Starship Troopers, and Dogma, and slightly worse than I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, Friday, Drop Dead Gorgeous, and Halloween 4.
Oh, that's weird. I mean, different genres, so you get that weird mix every time. I think anywhere around 2 is about right for this movie, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I think it's not an exceptional movie, but it's a memorable movie. It's one that you always will go back to. It's definitely no Red Dawn, but it still was a very good film.
I want to send a special shout out to Carlos the mailman, who just donated a full $150 to get Suburban Commando going. So Carlos, Porcupine Dude, Belgium, Gaijin, Chris, everybody who contributed into the movie to make this possible for Tom in Crane, Texas. We really, really appreciate it. Carlos also gave a huge donation, if you recall, during the Uncle Buck stream for Highland Park shooting. And so we really, really appreciate that generosity there. Very, very big donations. We really, really appreciate it. And Gerald just jumped in to say he loves you and Red Dawn rules. And speaking of listener feedback, let's get into a couple of emails before we close out. The first one comes from Matt from Jersey. He's writing in about The Godfather. And he says, I'd like to commission The Godfather. If somehow this makes it in 2022, then this is the 50th anniversary of the movie. If not, I can't wait to hear the reviews in 2023. Just email when you do the review, and I will be more detailed. I think this is like a mob email. That it's Matt from Jersey. You can't get your details until you email him, Big D. So, Godfather, is it on the calendar? Are we putting it on the calendar? What's the story?
Was that for Matt C?
Correct.
Yes, Matt C. It is on the schedule. Matt came through. It is commissioned. It's one of our great 70s films. And it will be October of 2023.
Yeah, it's the 51st anniversary.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt, for writing in. Next up, we have one from Temple, who says, salutations to the Shatters. I don't spend much time thinking about films. Most films, they aren't a big part of my life, except every now and then. Star Wars, not the original release, with my grandpa. Independence Day with my college girlfriend. And Ice Age, my niece's first movie. Clash of the Titans, the first movie my now wife and I saw together in Tucson. I've watched about 1 out of every 25 movies y'all review. Friday, Liar Liar, Stand By Me being 3 of the most recent. I didn't see Stand By Me when it came out, but it was profound. But you do bring me back to that 1990s era. I was in college and then working my first job in Washington, CWU, and Grand Coulee. I love Tori Amos, saw Pearl Jam at the Key Arena 3 nights in a row, and was reacquainting myself with the Seattle, Kent, an area I consider home. I was born in Phoenix, moved away as a baby, but I'm here now, and so enjoy that angle from Gene. You all bring different backgrounds and views on your thoughts on movies, a medium that is clearly a big part of your lives, and I enjoy all that immensely. Having a point of view from both men and women is crucial for setting the moment in time of movies. I like the concept of your podcast and the nostalgia of the movie combination. I watched Blade and Goodfellas after your reviews, and on the latter, I now know the characters behind some of the memes, including Ray Liotta's crazy laughing one, and Reservoir Dogs. I have seen it. It was amazing. I love films that just have action and tension from start to finish. I haven't seen it in I don't know how long until yesterday. When I saw it come up in your podcast listings, I knew I wanted to watch it again so I could get the fullness of your review. It's just as good as I remembered. When Roth is lying on the floor on the ramp, he looked so much like Christopher Waltz, I had to go back to make sure. The resemblance with the pointy teeth and the face length there is uncanny. I also looked at all the actors because besides Steve Buscemi and Harvey Keitel, I didn't remember anyone else. I enjoy story, therefore I enjoy Quentin Tarantino. Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill being top of the list of the ones I've seen of his. I enjoy story, therefore I enjoy your podcast. I constantly think of a film to commission, but I haven't thought of one yet. Best, Temple.
So Temple, thank you very much. And Temple, reading this right now, we get people all the time complaining, oh, we don't want to hear about you. But when you're discussing your childhood and common experiences and things you've done, it is that common thread that you necessarily don't have to see the movie to get some joy out of the memory or to join in the conversation. So this is the first time I thought maybe that's why we work sometimes. Because these movies are 40 years old now. We got to start going into the 2000s or our audience is going to die off soon. They're all going to be dead.
I mean, I keep going back to the fact that it's like if you want a movie podcast that analyzes the film and tells you whether it's good or bad because you may or may not watch it based on the review, we're not the guys to go with. We're not movie experts at all. The medium is an old movie that gives us the opportunity to talk about our shared experiences, Big D said, over the last, 40-something years. That's what we strive to do.
Yeah, we're the podcast where you want to come to if you want to find maritime law and whether the Goonies would be able to keep the jewels and whether or not Chunk's family could legally adopt Sloth and whether there is a novelization of the Goonies and whether Sloth had a bar mitzvah. If you listen to our Goonies episode, you'll learn all those things.
Quality podcast. All right. Thank you so much for everyone who wrote in. If you would like to write us, write hosts at shatthemovies.com. You can also leave us a voicemail using the SpeakPipe feature. Just go to shatpod.com and use SpeakPipe. You can use it from any device. The sound quality is superb, and Big D and I love not having to read your emails and hearing your beautiful voices. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, in this cult classic, sweethearts Brad and Janet, stuck with a flat tire during a storm, discover the eerie mansion of Dr. Frankenfooter. As their innocence is lost, Brad and Janet meet a house full of wild characters, including a rocking biker and a creepy butler. Through elaborate dances and rock songs, Frankenfooter unveils his latest creation, a muscular man named Rocky. Wow, this came out in 1975. I've not seen it, and you told me, hey, do some research on this before you watch it so you're prepared. This movie got me at rocking biker, creepy butler, and muscular man named Rocky. So I can't wait to see what I'm in for.
So good. So damn good. And who commissioned that?
That was commissioned by Jeremy D. That was a recent commission where he wanted, that's our Halloween Spooktacular.
Ah, the Halloween Spooktacular. Well, thank you, Jeremy D, for commissioning our upcoming film. I will be going to see it with another shadow cast. Hopefully with the Brad Majors in attendance. So I'm really excited about that.
When are you thinking of doing that?
October. I'll be going to it October 18th.
So I'll see if I can fly out.
Oh, you want to fly out for it? It's on a Wednesday night. No, Tuesday night.
I don't.
Sorry, Tuesday night.
Oh, the 8th. Hold on. I'll write that down.
Hey, if you can do it, I'll buy you the ticket. Not the plane ticket.
No. That's again. No, that's again. No, I fly for free. So it's just, yeah. I would love to come. Okay, cool.
Sarah's saying, oh my God, Big D.
She doesn't want me to come. I promise I won't inconvenience. No, I'll get a hotel, Sarah. I don't.
Well, we'll definitely put you in a hotel because the dogs will eat you alive. All right. That would be amazing. You should do it. You should do it. If you can. We would love it. All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for commissioning the upcoming Halloween Spooktacular. Thank you, Nathan, for commissioning First Blood. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible and all of our Twitch audience for joining us tonight. Thank you for your generosity and your attention. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. You can email us at host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com, where everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
You've seen all kinds of movies, but you've never seen anything like the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Let's do the time warp again. Let's do the time warp again.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show is wonderfully weird.
I'm your new commander. You now are my prisoner.
They're probably foreigners with ways different than our own.
It's fabulously freaky. It's a trip to transsexual Transylvania.
I'm just a sweet transvestite.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I'm transsexual Transylvania.
The story is strange.
For tonight is the night that my beautiful creature is destined to be born.
The songs are super.
Science fiction.
The scenery is smashing. The cast is completely crazy.
This isn't the Junior Chamber of Commerce, Brad.
There's a mad scientist named Frank N. Furter.
Come up to the lab and see what's on the slab.
And Rocky, his incredible creature.
I knew he was in with a bad crowd, but it was worse than I imagined.
A sinister servant named Riffraff.
Doing the time warp.
And Brad and Janet.
My name's Brad Majors.
Just a couple of clean-cut kids.
This is my fiancée, Janet Weiss.
Touch it, touch it, touch it, touch me. I wanna be dirty.
Eddie. Magenta.
When shall we return to Transylvania, huh?
Columbia. Dr. Scott.
Great Scott!
So give yourself over to absolute pleasure.
Don't dream it.
See the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Let's do the time warp again.
You've never seen anything like the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Let's do the time warp again. Let's do the time warp again.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show is wonderfully weird.